My name's Sarah Thompson, and I'll be looking after you for the next hour as we zoom our way through your fourth session of the week. Welcome to your community engagement session. I'm a Cook Islander via Pukapuka, Mangai and Rarotonga. My community background is I currently work for the Aranui Community Trust, which for those of you in Auckland is equivalent to working in community development in either Mangere or Otara. So, or if you're in Wellington base, Cannons Creek, Porirua. So that's where my job is right now, is providing access pathways for our local community made up of mainly Māori and Pasifika to medical services, education services, and general practice. I also have a background in football. That's the round ball. Most people assume, because I'm brown, it's the oval one. Nope, soccer. So I worked with a Mad Russian for 5 years here in Christchurch. Don't know if any of you heard about the Mad Russian with the all the money. So I have a background in the football community. And prior to that, I've also worked for the Ministry for Pacific Peoples. So I did a stint there. So I've a lot of engagement with community, and and our small community groups is where my heart is, looking after our connecting those that can't make those connections for themselves. So tonight you'll have the wonderful Dr. Allamanda Faatoese, so who's our latest Associate Dean at the University of Otago. Probably didn't know that because she doesn't tell anybody that stuff. She's been doing a lot of heart research for a long time in the Māori and Pacific space, and she'll be looking after you for the next hour. Just a bit of housekeeping before I go off. I won't go off, I'll be here. This is all being recorded. So whatever you say, Anuj is gonna use it against you later on. And Allamanda will have a question discussion session at the end. So, but feel free to put anything in the chat and join in, and I'll just make note of those and hand them through to Allamanda, and we'll get right on started. Allamanda's going to open us, with a karakia. I sort of rushed into that.
Yeah, so actually, I think I've seen all these names in the previous sessions, but welcome everyone. For those who are going to watch us in the recording, Allamanda Faatoese, researcher here for the Christchurch Heart Institute, University of Otago, also sit on the Outreach and Education team, which is the fun team that put this together, but also on the Pacific Leadership team as well. My research is largely community-based, so this is why I've been selected to deliver this session to you, to share some of the experiences, but also hopefully help you all, start your journeys, or wherever you may be on your journey with community engagement. So I will start us off. If I can find my. Oops. Just quickly pull this up here. Just start us off with a karakia. Kia karakia tātou, tu taua mai I runga, tu taua mai I raro, tu taua mai I roto, tu taua mai I waho. Kia tau ai, te Māori tū, te Māori ora ki te katoa, haumi e huie, tā ie. Before I do go on to our session, I wanted to acknowledge Dr. Moana Jackson, who passed yesterday. He passed away yesterday, and I'd like to acknowledge him. He is or was a Te Tiriti lawyer and expert, and fought for the rights of Māori. And I'd like to acknowledge him with his own quote, which is this: "The bliss of freedom enjoyed by those who have power should never mean the right to cause pain to those who are comparatively powerless. And no one's excuse of free speech should make another feel less free." So to Dr. Moana Jackson, hoia tō waka ki tō Hawaiki e te rangatira. May you paddle your waka to your ancestral homeland. Okay, moving on to community engagement, which is the last of the Ako 1 series. And I take my hat off to you all, because I think many of you have been with us on this journey for the week. And it is a lot to take in, but we applaud your courage and your bravery to come on this journey with us. So the quote from Dr. Moana Jackson, I think, really sets the scene around the core and what we are really standing for, which is changing narrative. And from changing narrative comes changing action and changing the way that we do things. And this core is all about not business as usual research that has impact and effect upon our Māori and Pasifika communities. So I'll bring you all back to really the mission statement for the core overall, which is this: to improve cardiovascular health and well-being in Aotearoa and achieve equity for Māori and Pacific peoples through research excellence. So the core, or the purpose, or the mission statement, or the vision statement, whatever you would like to call it, actually then demands engagement with community. And, you know, if you Google search community engagement, you'll find that there's a lot of literature internationally about community engagement, what the processes are, what the challenges have been, you know, how you evaluate community engagement. So I've just taken one definition here, which is community engagement is a process of inclusive participation that supports mutual respect of values, strategies, and actions for authentic partnership of people affiliated by geographic location, shared interest, or similar circumstances to address issues affecting community and well-being. But at its core, simply put, community engagement is relationship. So it is all about building relationships. It's all about maintaining relationships and then deepening and enriching the relationship even further. And if you were at the co-design webinar yesterday, then you will see, or would have heard, that actually these relationships are much longer than the period of the funding, are much longer than the period of the research project. And the longer the relationship with the communities, then the communities just really, like, you know, really support the mahi that you were doing. So the first thing, really, as a kind of a you know, we had this hui in September, if we go back to last year, and one of the things that researchers had said, well, actually, we don't know where to start. And so that was quite clear coming through. So we want you to know actually your community, who is in your community. And I've just put a list here of potential avenues or entry points into getting to know your community. You may actually know some people who can connect you. You might even see events where you think maybe there's a foot in the door to try and engage in the community there. Some institutions will have, say, Pacific advisory groups or Pacific staff, or even Māori advisory groups and Māori staff who might also be able to help you there. On the ground, in the community, we have our health organisations and NGOs that are actually doing the mahi with our Māori and our Pasifika populations. But there's also other things, like other avenues such as businesses, which we don't really think about, but actually maybe, you know, they could be possible linkages. And then obviously there's your obvious ones, like your marae, your churches, your schools, and other community groups. But I think if you are starting off on your journey, it's actually going out and actually talking to people. You need to be talking to people. In the research that I do, I talk to a lot of people, and a lot of my time is spent building relationships from the ground up and then maintaining them over time. People appreciate that you haven't forgotten about them, but also that once you get to know them and what their work or their agendas are, that you've remembered it and you're fostering a really good relationship. If you are having issues with finding out who is in your community, then we would recommend that you approach the core itself. And this will be, hang on, I get my finger right. Here we go, there's the email address that you can email through if you haven't been able to find a link to any community in your location. But that's kind of the first port of call is do the homework, find out who is around you, and then make friends, pretty much is how it would go. So, as a researcher, we come in and we think, oh, yep, okay, so I have a lot of fears. I may not have ever done this before because traditionally in my work, it doesn't require me to actually be front facing. I can actually maybe hide in the four walls of my office, behind my computer, behind my pipette, but actually, and I guess in a way when we're writing our grants, we can say, oh yes, we can address equity, we can promote education, we can do all this good stuff when it comes to community engagement. And we have this view of being able to do these things, which is great. That really is our aspiration and our goal, to achieve these things through research. But actually our communities might not be thinking the same. They might not be as optimistic. First of all, because they might see you as just another researcher. What is it that you want from me? Do you understand our struggles? Do you understand what it is like to live in poverty when you've lived a life of privilege? Are you going to tell us what to do? Don't tell us what to do. We know what's happening on the ground. We just want to be able to ensure that our communities are healthy and our families are healthy and well. So this is kind of, we're getting people to kind of step into these spaces who may not have done this before. And already the community might be a scary thing, which it can be. However, this webinar and sort of future ACL series will be kind of helping you to break down some of these barriers. And that actually comes through your own personal development, but also the development of the team. So the rules of building community engagement always start with trust. You even think about your own self and your own relationships at home. It all begins with trust. And the agenda that you go into a community with, what is that agenda? Is it one that is purely going to come in and get data and then pop away and never see them again? Or is it going to be really authentic, genuine, and long-lasting? Also, too, to build trust, you need to start early in the piece if you can. And in the space of research, before we even start writing the grants, really is where that begins. So start early, start to build those relationships, and ideally to have them in person, but obviously with Omicron, that poses a big challenge. However, our Māori and our Pasifika communities across New Zealand are actually finding that online is really good, because as well, it's another way to stay connected if we had to go into another lockdown. So there are those online platforms that can be used. But then again, if it depends on the community themselves, if they have access to devices, if they have access to Wi-Fi. So it might not be a goer. But I think, if it's a long-term relationship, then you will find these things out along the way, and then you will there'll be workaround solutions to, again, having that continual contact over time, and, making it authentic. it is about being an ally, a friend, someone who cares for the community. And also being transparent. I guess traditionally in research, it hasn't really been transparent, and some of our communities in Aotearoa, but also internationally, especially our minority and Indigenous communities, have experienced, negative ways of negative treatment really by researchers, and have felt like they've just been used. So being transparent right from the very beginning, is always a good thing. Just being honest about what you can and can't do. And people admire that. If you can't do something that they would like to in research, then just be straight up and say you can't do it. But you could help in finding ways to get some of their problems with solutions. So you can be an avenue to including others to help the community. Also too, accessibility. So could be translated in several ways, but one is location. So if your engagement is going to be at a location, it needs to be at a location where they feel safe and that they're familiar with. In the urban centres where there's free parking, that parking can be actually a barrier, but also travel can be a barrier as well. And also accessibility. Are you going to be an ally? Are you going to be, someone that they can feel safe with communicating with, sort of in between your meetings with them? Can they just call upon you to come in and maybe talk to their communities, or find people that can talk to their communities about the things that they're interested in? The next is contextualization. And that is really understanding what is valued by these communities. And that obviously comes through the conversations with the communities, with the leaders. It's understanding actually who are the leaders as well of your community groups, and talking with them, because they can also be an influence about what the community, if the community gets involved in research or not. And then at the same time, once you've kind of built those three into your engagement, then comes equity. So you can actually start to address some of the equitable issues, making sure that whatever you bring to the table ensures that actually it is enough resourcing, or that can give positive and beneficial impacts for the community. Transparency again comes through. Again, you need to be transparent right throughout the whole process. There's no hidden agenda. Sometimes you may have developed some research design and framework, and then along the way you get these ideas that come in your mind. You think, oh yeah, that'd be pretty good to add in. Maybe even have those conversations at the same time with your communities, or maybe they might have some ideas as well about, sort of the things that they want to build in to a research project. But also being true to your word. So if you say you're going to do something, you need to deliver. And I guess that's where you need to be quite careful about what you do promise that you will deliver. So again, just making sure that you're a person or a research team that follows through with what they say. And then this again builds even more trust for the community to the research and the research team. And then ultimately autonomy, you want to ensure that their communities can drive these things themselves, and at the end of it, not just at the end of it, but right throughout the whole process of your building engagement, that they are empowered, that we as researchers act as ways to connect them to build capacity, for example. There may be some individuals who you have identified or identify themselves as champions. How can you help them, become maybe qualified if they want to do certain papers, or get some experience behind them to then follow on that as a career path amongst their own community. But also too, this is a really nice quote that we often use in Pacific Health, is actually the communities don't really care what you know, but they actually want to know that you care. And that really comes down to being compassionate, being able to listen and actually hear their lived experiences. Their lived experiences are, you know, are really key to the solutions for addressing equity in heart health. And it may not be something that you think, oh, that's not a biggie, you just, you know, you can do this, that, and the other thing. But actually for them, it may not be a possibility. So the change in narrative comes around in the change that we hear things and we action them out together with the community. There are different levels of engagement, and this diagram comes from the World Health Organization. This is community engagement in health promotion. So with every increasing level of engagement, from inform being sort of your lowest level of participation, right through to your empower, which is where you've got the majority participation by the community. At every different level, there, you know, your inform and your consultation processes, I guess, can be seen as tokenistic. We want to move away from that model. We want to go into involving communities, you know, making sure that we collaborate well with our communities, but also too, what the core is really driving towards is actually the empowering stage of community engagement, which, you know, as it says here, involves you know, people acting collectively to gain greater control over their community, including, you know, their health and the quality of life. But there's also a major shift in power dynamics. So coming into a community space as academics, we are seen at a higher level, I guess, perceived by the community as at a higher level of knowledge than they are. But actually, they are the ones that live their reality. They are the ones that know best what is happening, and they know best what are the issues, and they know best what are possible solutions. So we come in as kind of a facilitator to ensure that they can realize their own goals. The other point of note here is that actually you can't force anything on the community. You know, gone are the days of, you know, sort of that monologue, you know, of you must do this, you must do that. Let the community decide as a collective how they want to ensure that their families or their whānau, their ainga, are healthy and well. So again, you know, when I was talking about the change in mindset, this is the change in mindset. We need to kind of let go of, I guess, our egos and then just listen to our communities and hear what they have to say. And then using that as the guide to, you know, to finding ways to resource it, to get it in action, and then to, you know, implement it, and then find the champions who will sustain that implementation in their own community. The other things too is that, you know, being involved in community engagement doesn't just involve, you know, anything aligned to the research. It can be outside of the research. So such as building capacity, as I've mentioned before, you know, there may be people who have identified themselves, or you've identified them, who actually would need a bit more resourcing to get them maybe qualified in certain areas. And, you know, it's something that is their passion. You're able to do that. There are community events that happen, obviously not now, but, you know, once COVID passes, then they'll be up and running again. And they're really great to be visible in the community in a platform that's not research related. Okay, so, so that's really important. Also, as well, you could be an advocate in your organization. So I've just put here as an example, you know, the Pacific Language Weeks go throughout the whole year, maybe even in your own organizations, whether that be universities or DHBs or whatever, wherever you work, you know, start to bring in some of this wonderful color of culture to your workspaces, because, you know, it then acknowledges, well, you know, we have these other cultures within our you know, area, our regions, and this is how we would like to acknowledge them. And, you know, and certainly our Pacific and our Māori communities would probably come in and give some lessons around language, or, you know, if you wanted to do that. So you can be an advocate for change within your organisation. Also health literacy. So this is actually a photo of some of our, they're now doctors, but they were Pacific medical students at the time, being involved in some of our health screening. So again, it's not anything research related, but it's more health related. And they would come in and do a very simple health screen, such as measuring weight and body composition, measuring blood pressure, having pamphlets from the Heart Foundation that were translated in the different languages, well, pertaining to different Pacific languages, and also English. But even just having our medical students, our Pacific medical students involved in this is still showing visibility of yourself being in, you know, in the community, but also again in another platform that's not just about the research. So I guess in a way I'm saying, you know, yes, research may be kind of the starter for their community engagement, but actually there's a lot more that we can do outside of research that actually the community sees. I can certainly share a story which I heard the other day from a colleague of mine who is involved in, it goes to lots of different events and meetings, hui, the whānaus, and, you know, he's Pākehā, you know, and he's going in with his research agenda on his mind about, you know, trying to recruit more Māori and Pacific into his research projects. And he did say, you know, sometimes it's not really I haven't got the right person, you know, when I've made these community connections, and it hasn't really resulted in increasing our numbers of Māori and Pacific. But I did have to remind him that actually sometimes, you know, when I have spoken to people in the community and referenced him as a cardiologist, people remember him. So even though you know, he was going out with a mindset of trying to increase the numbers of Māori and Pacific in his research studies, the other benefit was actually he was visible to the community and they remember him. You know, how many cardiologists do you get going to community meetings? Not many, but, you know, but I guess really with the core, you know, this is about being visible, about being out there and actually showing your authenticity and your interest in being engaged to actually address these heart health issues. And the communities are definitely concerned about their whānau. They're definitely concerned about their ainga, the kāinga. And, you know, if we're there, within our communities, being visible, that makes a big difference when it comes to then starting to talk about your research, potential research projects, or maybe even partnering up, saying, actually, what do you think about, you know, what are your issues, and, you know, is there a way that we can help, you know, give solutions to those problems. So the other thing too is, you know, again, research fatigue, you know, the struggle is real. So all of our communities, our Māori and Pacific communities especially, are approached by not just us researchers, but also health organisations, other community organisations who've developed, you know, programs that address health issues or maybe financial literacy. They get tired, you know, and I can certainly share an example of my own where I went and spoke to a Samoan community, and about my, what I had was doing in my research project, and had performed in other with other Pacific Island groups. And then they said, oh, when can we start this? Because we're actually just finishing another 12-week program that we're running with another organization. And I just thought to myself, I think I might just step away, and then I'll come back maybe in a year's time to approach them once they've had a bit of a break from being part of different programs. So just be aware. So this is where, it'd be nice to have a coordinated effort if you can, if you know that there are researchers in the same centres, to coordinate the efforts around contacting our communities. But also timing as well. So if you feel like, if you have a similar experience to what I had last year, then you may just think, actually, I did say to them, I'll come back in a year, because I think your program, your involvement in programs have been back to back for the last 6 months, so I won't ask any more of you. So just being respectful to them in that way. And also being flexible. The one thing about community is that things change very rapidly on the scene. So you may have organised like a meeting, or talking about your research, or talking about who you are, what you do, what your team does. And then all of a sudden you'll get the call to say, actually, sorry, we can't do it today because, could be a tangi, it could be like in the case of a Pacific one, could be that, they've had a Pacific minister visiting, and so they've had to throw this celebration together at last minute. So, you need to be flexible, that our community groups are busy groups. The families are busy. And so they will do what they prioritize as first, and then you might come as a second to their priority list. But again, just being flexible, again, moving with the community, adapting to the changes there as well. And this is really just, just to remind you, how we talk about outputs. Actually, community engagement is actually an output as well. And the outputs can be, I guess, in a way, addressing research staff competency and cultural safety. So this is where we we're developing our own selves in these areas, recognizing that we need to maybe change our language, change our approach to communities, but also too that we also we come in as a supportive facilitator for these communities at the same time. Also too, when you've come into your community engaged, or to your community, ensuring that it is a safe and trusting environment, although that's not kind of one that you would, or the university would recognise as an output. Actually, it's a really good output for, for your research group anyway, because you've found, that actually these particular communities like to meet at this place. That's where they feel safe. Another community meets at another location because of this, that, and the other thing. And that's an environment that they are familiar with. Sort of further down the line of your research, or your community engagement, is being able to then start to talk about decision making and governance within your own research, and that comes from the questions that your communities will ask. What happens to my data? What happens to my blood samples? Or when you've got them, where do they go, and how do I know that you're treating them well? And actually, the publication on the left there is really a good example of community engagement in that space and around biobanking. So have a read of that. That was quite an extensive process where they met with different marae, different iwi across Aotearoa to actually form some, I guess, Māori guides around biobanking and the processes around biobanking, making sure that they aligned with Te Ao Māori The other thing too is actually building capacity within the community. As I've said before, just, take the opportunities to, build the champions within the communities and themselves. But also too, keeping in mind, what the motivations are for both yourself as a research team, but also what the motivations are for the community more so. So if their motivation is actually we want to make sure that our Māori men don't die before 50, then what is it that you need to keep addressing until they find and figure out solutions to those really hard questions. And last but not least, this is another example of community engagement. This is one that I was involved with, didn't lead it, but it was led by Suzanne Pitama and her team. So this was, again, just working with communities. I guess these are just some quotes from the paper itself, but just showing that actually if you invest time, if you invest effort into those relationships, then, the research process will be very clear, and they'll be accepted by those who go through the research and have been endorsed by really sort of the Māori iwi or the tribal affiliates, but also the health community, so the primary care, which is pretty much what this study was working with. But also too, that actually, you can work within a very Western, a biomedical, clinical space, and then bring in the cultural aspects, to really deliver this, because actually at the end of the day, what you want to do is, advance Māori health. That's really the goal, is to ensure that Māori health is advanced, Pasifika health is advanced, and that really should be our motivation. Bringing it back to really the mission of the core in the first slides. I guess the outputs coming from this study were actually that there were kind of two community engagements that happened here. The first was actually our two academic communities. So one was the Māori Indigenous Health Institute, and the other was the Christchurch Heart Institute, but also some researchers non-Māori researchers from Auckland. And that was a big learning curve as well. So our Māori colleagues actually helped us to try and understand why we do things, sort of te ao Māori, why we do things the way that Māori do them. And the research design changed as well it was adapted to be more kaupapa Māori. We had, before that, the leads of the research, which were Suzanne Pitama and Vicky Cameron at the time, spent a whole year building engagement before we even started talking about the project. They just wanted to ensure that there was, people were interested. Are they interested in about heart health and having this, and what did they want to see happen in the research itself? We had 4 newsletters per year to all of our participants and stakeholders. We reported to iwi organisations, or back to the iwi organisations that were involved in the different communities, primary care and science communities. This was a 5-year follow-up study, so we maintained contact with them throughout the 5 years. Again, regular comms with everyone. We ensured that actually we built capacity as well for our Māori medical students to bring them in. Actually, we also had Māori doctors, which was great because, when our Māori and our Pacific see Māori and Pacific doctors in that space, they get really engaged and really excited. And I've put down here, we had 2 administrators who changed their careers to nursing. So one of them was a Pasifika person and one of them is an Asian person. But, they saw the need within the research projects themselves and thought, actually, I really want to do health. There is a great need for our Māori and our Pasifika communities. So we actually supported them to go into nursing as well. At the same time, the findings of the research highlighted a really great need in one of our rural communities, and that ended up employing one of the participants as a smoking cessation officer. So she herself was, had successfully quit smoking and then really became an advocate for that. So even in their own health system, this was a gap that was highlighted, and then that was quite easily filled by someone who was really invested in it and had gone through that experience. So even though, and I'll stop share this, even though, community engagement may be quite, sort of new territory, there's a lot of fears, then just know that you need a really good team as well behind you, and forming those initial engagements with people in the community really do help. Yes, you will have a clash of worldviews, but you need to work through those. There'll be some very sort of heated contentions, but again, you can, it is about sitting down and being open and talking about those things honestly and how to overcome them. But at the same time, the heart of the community engagement is not, not us as researchers, is actually the community, because they're the ones that have to live in their community themselves. They're the ones that know and live and breathe the issues around them, but also too, they know and live and breathe the solutions that come with it. So yeah, that's it for tonight for community engagement. So what I will do now, I guess, really is open the floor to any questions, if there are any questions, or even sharing experiences. I guess one question is, who is new to community engagement in this Zoom currently? We have quite a few. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So I guess the first, really the first step would be to, one, just start to find out who is in your community, really. And then maybe have those discussions around heart health. And sometimes for people who, and I acknowledge our basic science, our laboratory-based, our data-based people who don't really, sort of have the opportunity to be in front of community, but there are ways to engage, which could involve the outreach activities, and also the building capacity activities as well. They may not have, you can also talk about the wider picture. So for example, if you are in electrophysiology and you're talking about the conductivity that happens in the heart, it's not my area, but I'll make it very clear. But you can talk about like the issues that come from that, such as AFib. Is that correct? So, but the bigger picture. So the things that people know and relate to. So, and even just talking. Actually, the other thing too to note is there is death by PowerPoint as well. So be creative and in your outreach activities. I think we have a real opportunity here with the core to actually our communities will be able to know, who they have that can actually, bring on board to create some really unique, but also relatable outreach activities as well. Yeah.
Allamanda, I've got an experience just when you were talking about the place and the space, and I wanted to reiterate how important that was. We had some really cool research that was being done in the Child Wellbeing Research Institute, and we wanted to share with those communities that we'd researched with. And even though we had that relationship, we still kept offering things at the university, and we were questioning why people weren't coming, and we'd changed the times, we changed it, and it was the parking. The parking was the issue. It was something so small that it changed the game. So, I mean, for us, we then hosted the next one at the church, and just went out instead of expecting people to come in to the university, and that was a game changer, an absolute game changer. And even though the relationship was there, it was just those simple things that we hadn't quite thought about that made the world of difference. So I just wanted to say thank you for sharing that, the knowledge and expertise, and those little things really do matter.
Yeah, and also the time of day. So, you know, exactly the same point around, you know, let the community select their day that they would like to maybe meet. Even in the research aspect, let them be the drivers of when that happens. And I can certainly attest to that. So in a current project that I've got going myself is I work with our Pacific families, and I let them choose when we come in and we meet with them for 12 weeks on a weekly basis. And so they have, I said, you decide when you would like us to come in, and we will come in. And that has actually been a real, it makes you accessible as well to them. There have been another project I worked on, working around the clock, because, you know, our particularly in our Pacific communities, some people are working many jobs and are only available either early morning, so 6 o'clock on a Saturday morning was my earliest, or late at night, which was 9 o'clock on a Friday night. So, but yeah, you need to kind of be flexible, and I think that's kind of, you know, you were saying, Susie, it's the small things which which matter, and they do. So if the community knows that, yes, they're available after I finish work, or, you know, after I've fed the kids and, you know, have a bit of downtime, then I can go into that. So again, if your research is community facing, then you, be adaptable to that as well, just so that they know that actually they can still take part in the research. They are interested. They want to contribute to knowledge of themselves, so that they can help, you know, their future generations going forward. Any other questions?
Well, I might just add a few things to what Allamanda was saying. So yeah, thanks for that, Al. She's right. It is relationship. So I try to deny that I'm part of any community, but everybody comes to, I work at the Aranui Community Trust, and everybody comes to me to engage with our community. And we become patch protective, because researchers just come in, they send a long full page of writing that nobody can understand. So it's also understanding the community's literacy. Nobody wants a full page. Keep it simple. If you just bullet point what you want and say this is what you'll get, that's much easier for them to understand than a whole bunch of waffle, because that's what it means to us. It's very important to you, and I understand that, but it isn't to them. You want to engage with them, learn their language. So yeah, you want to engage with our community, learn their language, and that relationship is important. Being accessible, really important. Being flexible, those are really important things. I used to work for the ministry. I had government agencies call me from Wellington, say, we want to meet your community at 10 o'clock tomorrow. Nobody's available at that time. And they wouldn't change the time, because that's when their flights were. That's when flights were available to them. So, and then they decide, then they get upset that nobody shows up. If you're not prepared to be flexible and adapt to the community you want to engage with, you're not going to have them show up. So accessibility and that flexibility is really important, and letting them pick the time. A lot of government agencies still choose 10 o'clock as an engagement time and 12 o'clock during the day, because it works for them. They can fly here from Wellington and then hop on a flight back at 4 or 5. That doesn't work for the community. And so if you have 4 people there, you have to be happy with the 4 that you get. But what happens is, as Allamanda and I know, the same people show up to every engagement. So you're only getting the same opinions from the same 5 people every time. You're not actually getting a good cross-section of the community. Yeah. So who are you trying to target is really important. Being honest, yeah, that is a great one. But that relationship is really important. Your relationship is much longer than the period of funding. So will you come back? I get so many people that never come back to us. And that's disappointing, but people want to see what did they do with my research. They took my heart and soul and gave nothing back. Yes, they fed me. Yes, they gave me a voucher, but actually, what did you do with that? What did it mean for you in the long run? Yes, publishing a PhD or research paper is fantastic, but actually just letting them know this is what happened with it, and this is the difference it made for your community. How did what value did it add? So what I always say is, what value are you adding to our community? If you can always remember your value add, if you're always adding value to us, then we'll always be happy. So exactly. So it's making sure you maintain that value add, because people forget that you've got to add value to our community. Just don't take, and don't just email us. There's an assumption that everybody has email and can do a survey. It is like the ministry, the government agency saying we want to meet at 12 or 10. Why aren't, like you, Susie, why aren't they coming? And then they want to meet in town, exactly like the university. There's no car parking. So it is, all those small things make a massive difference. And so, yeah, I thought I'd just add that to.
Yeah, just a couple of questions from the chat, just very quickly while we're here and we've got a little bit of time. Yep. What's the best way to disseminate your research findings in the communities and audit the changes? So the best way to disseminate your research findings is to do it simply. And as Sarah said, speak their language, present it in a way that is palatable to the community. How you audit the changes, I haven't actually covered evaluation of community engagement and impact of your research, and I did that purposefully because that is something that we in our outreach and education team are still actually trying to discuss. And it may be even an aspect of your own project when you're talking with your communities as well, to come up with actually what is the best way to gauge a change that is through from the research project. Is it a qualitative aspect? Is it actually quantitative, crunching the numbers and looking at, I don't know, before and after your research grant? Is it also too measuring, all those other things that I've mentioned about building capacity, about, being involved in sort of the other outreach programs as well, and contributing to the, Sarah said it nicely, the value add in those outreach programs, in addition to what you're value adding to your research project. Just another one I've seen as well, about having any thoughts about preclinical or basic scientists making a genuine contribution to help build workforce capacity, making it making it seen as a viable option, a career option amongst our Māori and our Pasifika rangatahi. If you're in a centre that have where our Māori students, we have one here called Kia Hauora in Christchurch, which takes our Māori, I think they're year 12, year 13 students. They bring them through to the labs, and you can actually spend a day with them. But it actually doesn't take an organisation. You can actually go and actually ask the schools themselves if they know of any students who might be interested in coming to spend a day. Certainly there are colleagues in my lab who do that, who, some students have come up, high school students have actually emailed the university saying, oh, can we do a science project? And they come in once a week for 4 weeks and they learn, they have a little project assigned to them just in their own time. That's of interest. There's also, making a plug, is Pūtahi STEM as well. So they are another organisation that work with rangatahi, and they do internships as well for their year 13 students right through to their third or final year at university. So that organisation is really good because they also provide a wraparound support for their students, and they're all Māori, and they have, taken them out of trying to change the narrative around sort of identifying those who will do well. Our current education system would stream them into non-academic, but they've taken some of these Māori students out and provided extra support and resourcing and tutoring, and then have turned their lives around. So, and you've got people who are entering into university who may not have ever, if they'd not been captured by this program, they would have probably not done an academic career straight off the bat. So Pūtahi STEM is another really awesome organisation to get involved with. So, but we can probably give those links later on through email as well. They're always looking for partners to provide internships as well, much like a summer studentship. Anyone have tips on pushing back on ethics committees that have practices that prevent great relationships with communities? Wow. Well, I guess, the research question or the research issue or the issue that's identified by the community really is, is going to drive, doing the right thing the right way. And I think ethically you can't, well, unless it's, I don't know, they have issues about method delivery, or maybe even, like Sarah said, our information sheets are less than, 10 pages, all of a sudden down to 1 page. We have had a workaround before, Susie, where we've actually made an amendment. We've asked for our consent form to be 1-page bullet points, still have the full to give to people. It is a barrier, the ethics consent form and information sheet. So there is a workaround. You just need to justify why it should be shorter than 10 pages. Kudos Science, I see there is in Hamilton. Is that right, Anuj? As well, they're another organisation that do outreach programs into high schools as well and communities.
We've got a similar program here at Auckland as well that involves young rangatahi from different schools in the North Island. So yeah, we'll see those details as a follow-up email. Yeah.
But I guess at the same time with high school students, you want to make sure that they are also in a safe space if they come with you. They bring themselves, and they definitely, when they come into our spaces of research, they don't think that they're of any value, but they are themselves. They bring their Māoriness, their Pacificness of various, island groups, and that's really special. So it's really important to value that. So again, ensuring that they don't feel like they're not, they're not valued, because they are. Our role, if they come in to see us, is to actually show them how exciting a space it is, and also that we need more of them coming in to actually tell our stories, from a Māori, from a Pacific angle, and we are just the facilitators of growing them to be the future storytellers of, what are the solutions, what are the problems, and then what are the solutions. So in that case, it is 7 o'clock. Sarah, did you want to say?
No, it is 7 o'clock. I think we'll just leave it there. Actually, I learned quite a bit tonight too. Thanks, Al.
Okay.
I'd just like to say thank you to everybody. Me taki mata maata a te waiholo for joining us all tonight. I hope it was. Hope you gained something from tonight, even if it's just a little piece. And we'll just have Al close us off in a karakia. Thank you, Al.
Aye, that's okay. Kia karakia kia tātou. Kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki, ihu karaiti, me te aroha o te atua, me te whiwhitanga ki te wairua tapu, ake. Āmine.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. And if you've enjoyed the series, please fill out the evaluation forms. We really will then start to mould some of our future sessions to those as well. But good luck in practicing it. Feel free to ask any questions. Just email. This is really hard. Email that email address there. Yeah. And but yeah, we really look forward to just you going out and exploring. Feel free to come and ask questions for guidance, but again, just start off with the basic stuff. Keep it simple and not too hard, but yeah, we'd love to hear in the future how you go as well. So yeah, there you go. I just put the email address in the chat box for you to do that. Otherwise, yeah, all the best. May the force be with you all.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Take care.
Anu, still beat you, Susie.
It's another one. I can't believe you